Good evening. If I could have everyone's attention, please. We're starting to begin. Good evenings, my colleagues and audience members. My name is Ed Reising. I am the chairman of the Land Use and Transportation Committee for the City Council. We are here this evening to conduct our third hearing on map amendments to City Council Bill 12-0152, TransForm Baltimore zoning. This evening, we would like to hear from as many of our constituents as possible, and we would like to thank the Southeast Anchor Library for hosting this hearing this evening. Every hearing is open to public testimony, and citizens may come and provide testimony at each public hearing. The following guidelines, however, will be forced today and throughout this process. Persons wishing to offer testimony must sign in and state their name, their address, or community in which they reside, and who, if anyone, they represent for the record. It is helpful to the committee if each person testifying or requesting a zoning change for a specific property complete the information form being handed out by staff, and this is the form right here. So they have it out at the table. The staff has these information forms. So if you haven't signed one, if you haven't filled it out, go ahead out and fill it out now. I'd appreciate it. Electronic files are being made available on the City Council's website. Bill documents can be downloaded from the bill file page by inputting the following link into your web browser, which is https://baltimore.legistar.com. A copy of the maps has also been placed in the bill folder located in the Executive Secretary's office, City Hall. Her name is Natarna Austin. I encourage everyone to visit the City's Council website to stay updated about the bill. The Land Use and Transportation Committee intends to work progressively, reviewing all map amendments presented. City agencies and the public will be asked to participate by raising their questions or their comments. If you would like to contact the committee, please mail correspondence to the Office of Council Services. Attention to Jennifer Coates. This is Jennifer right here. 100 North Holiday Street, Baltimore, Maryland 21202 at jennifer.coates@baltimorecity.gov. We have some of my colleagues. We have Councilwoman Sharon Green Middleton to my left. Next to me is the Vice Chair of the committee, Jim Kraft, who is hosting in his district here. Thank you, Jim. We have with us John Willis, who is the attorney for the committee. We have Kara Kunst, who's in the rear. We also have Paul Plymouth, who's representing President Bernard Jack Young. In case I miss anyone, is there anyone here representing Mayor Stephanie Rawlins-Blake? No? Okay. I have one of the ground rules I have is if you could please turn off your cell phones, Android, smartphones, or put it on mute to give courtesy and respect for those who are going to testify. I'd appreciate it. Because of the number of the people that's going to testify with their amendments, we're going to have a 3-minute ground rule for you to testify. We want to make sure everyone has the opportunity to testify tonight. And first of all, I want to say this. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. This is the largest crowd. This is our third hearing on map amendments, and I just want to. That means you care about your neighborhood and your community. So I just want to thank you for coming out and testifying tonight. We will start with the planning. Okay, yeah, all right, thanks. That's why you have staff. I would like to acknowledge the receipt of correspondence from certain individuals or groups. Karen Hassan, resident of Fells Point. Randolph C. Nepper, representing Poplar Hill Association. Brent Fuller, representing 737 Cal Street LLC. Deborah Templer, resident of the 1st District, and Arcady Levi, resident of District 1. I apologize if I messed up your name. Before we go into the planning department, Councilman Kraft, this is your district, and again, I want to thank you for hosting it. You have a few words you want to?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We wanted to bring everybody up to date also on the process so that everybody understands where we are in the process. As some of you know, this process began a number of years ago, and Laurie may say a little bit about that, but the bill was introduced in 2012, and it went to planning, and we've been hearing it since 2013. There are 19 sections in the bill. There are the tables and there are the maps. On the text and amendments, on the text hearing, we had 12 hearings in the community on the text of the bill. We had 30 work sessions on the text. We've had 6 voting sessions on the text, and we're continuing to vote on the text. We just started the map hearings last week. The amendments are proposed as we move through the individual items. So there have been no discussions of amendments to the maps until last week, just as when we went through the 19 sections of the bill. When we got to Section 1, we talked about amendments to Section 1, got to Section 2. Amendments were added on the days that we were there, and we've had recommended amendments since then. We're continuing to receive amendments now, and there will be another map hearing to make up for the hearing that was canceled at Poly. That was supposed to be our first map hearing, and that hearing had to be canceled because of water, the pipes broke at Poly. So there will be that. The next part of this, though, so that everyone understands, is this is not the end of the process. We are in the process. So we will not be voting on these maps for some time yet, because we have to continue the voting on the text, because we cannot make the final decision on the maps until we have the final decision on the text, because the text contain the definitions of the respective zoning categories. So while we're pretty certain what the definitions of those zoning categories are going to be based on the recommended amendments that we had during those hearings, we still don't have the final definitions, and we will not have them until we complete the voting on all of the amendments, and we still have hundreds of amendments to go through yet. So we won't be voting on the maps for some time yet. So we will be continuing to take comments and recommendations on the proposed amendments to the map as we move forward. So for anyone who thought that tonight was the last time, it's not. It never has been. This process has been continuing for some time, and it will continue for some time, but we just wanted to make sure that everyone had the right information and knew how the process would be, and so hopefully that'll answer some of your questions. Mr. Vice President.
Thank you. We're also joined by representatives of the mayor. Andy Smolin is in the back, and to his left, my right, is Nick Blendy also. Thank you. The planning department will provide us with a presentation, a report, and what I'm saying to my colleagues on the committee is that each council member can ask 2 questions and a follow-up question. But I really want to hear from the audience, from the residents, constituents in regards to their concerns on the map amendment. So, Laura, you want to?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Vice Chairman. You covered a lot of area I think I was going to touch on, so I'll try not to repeat that. One housekeeping item, the maps along the walls here are the maps dated September 2015. These are the maps as introduced, which is the base color, and there's a key on each map as to what category, what the colors mean. And then in red type on the maps are amendments the Planning Commission heard favorably in 2013. The blue type on the maps are amendments that were received by this committee prior to September 25th of this year. So anything received after September 25th is being held in a file, and then we'll do another set of maps once we have all the suggested amendments together. So if you submitted something after September 25th, that's why it's not on the map. We do have staff, Martin French is here on this side to answer questions, and Jamie Williams is outside and can look up specific address questions, you know, if you can't see on the map where your property is or whatever, and want specific questions asked, she's available. And if you have more questions about the text or what it means, you know, Martin can kind of float in and out if you need to have a more in-depth conversation in the lobby there. So as the councilman said, this has been, oops, is that still going? Okay. He says I'm okay. This has been going since the bill was introduced in 2012. Our work started a couple years prior to that, with examining the existing zoning code. Many of you have probably been to some meeting in the last 3 years on this, so I'm not going totally back to the beginning, but just for those who may not have been involved at all, this is the zoning code, dates from 1971, and it is the rules and regulations that govern land development. The authority to zone is given to us by the state of Maryland, and our first code dates to 1923, and we are now proposing to repeal and replace the 1971 code. A couple points about zoning. Again, it's determining, it's a combination of maps and text. Every property has a zoning category. You can't have nothing. You know, it's the basic rules. So you're going to have a category, and the text then tells you what that category means, what's permitted or not permitted in that category. And it is important to realize that zoning is not what distinguishes between good and bad businesses. A store is a store for land use purposes. An office is an office, regardless of what type of office. And it obviously does not determine human behavior. As I mentioned, the existing code is from 71, and we did update the city's master plan in 2006, which then said to redo one of the master plan to-do items was redo the zoning code, and we have been at this for a while. But one of the big things to note, and we went much more in depth in this in the earlier meetings on the text, is the change in the city since 71 and the notions about separations of uses that were governing principles in 71 that are no longer relevant today. People are much more interested in walkability and in mixed use, and in the whole nature of business and industry has changed. Factories are no longer what they were. They're much more mixed use businesses and much more integrated in the community. These are the principles that were in the comprehensive plan that were to guide the rezoning for us, and that is to support and guide development and investment, create predictability, enhance and protect neighborhood character, strengthen retail districts, and most importantly, promote job growth. These were the principles that took us to where we are in terms of developing the content of the code. And the topic tonight really is just the mapping. So what I'm going to try to do is go through the 4 basic mapping principles that guided, how we got to what you're looking at today. And the first one is probably, 95% of it, and that is maintain current zoning districts in their present location where the controls are appropriate for the current development and no change is desired. In other words, if what's there is working, leave it well enough alone. And for most of our residential districts, that is what we've done. There are some places in the city where there were residential districts that were not aligned to what was on the ground. I'll go into those. And this is just a key to the maps, and the key, these are online as like individual areas that you can zoom in on, as well as the variation, which is by councilmatic district. And there's also a link to the search site, which allows you to search by address. So again, this is an example of an R7 neighborhood, and it's basically working. So this is maintaining the existing controls. And I put this in because this is southeast where we are. That olive green is the R8 zoning, which is what most of southeast Baltimore is today, and that is not proposed to change. Some of the new tools we'll go into. The second mapping principle is to remap areas to reduce nonconformities. And a nonconformity is when the structure on the ground does not follow the underlying zoning on which it sits. Sometimes that happens because there was a mistake in 1971, or it could happen because the buildings were built before the code in 1971. With computers and technologies, we did try our best to adjust and reduce nonconformities. So the map there on the left is R4 to an R3. R4 permits semi-detached houses like the twins, and R3 limits to detached houses. So if you had a semi-detached house that had an R3 zoning, that's non-conforming, and that creates a problem for the property owner. If they were to do an addition or renovation of their house, they'd probably have to go through a hearing and that sort of thing. Sometimes it can cause financing problems. So it's a goal to reduce nonconformities. The third mapping principle is to remap applicable areas to implement development policies. So where we have, for example, policy, this is an example of an old industrial building, and it had been vacant and underutilized, and one of the policies and the goals in this area, this is an arts district, was to be able to reuse that building for mixed use, people living there but working there as well, studios, businesses, in a combined mixed use. So we developed a new zoning category that does not exist in the current code called industrial mixed use, which allows that mix of uses, sort of a loft district kind of a thing. And that's the blue on the map, and it's also, the photo is an example of it. And applying those policy-specific districts when remapping to resolve specific conditions or to achieve specific purposes. And that would be, examples are things like a transit-oriented development district. And so that is that aqua color there. That's the light rail station, and there's a lot of land area there that's underutilized, and we're recommending that that be the mixed-use TOD zones. Campus and hospital zones. Most of our campus and hospitals are actually in residential zones, which is a real problem for their basic operations. Obviously, they're not residential in their use, and so we created zones that are more reflective of those anchor institutions in those areas. And we have a number of overlay zones to meet those specific needs. I mentioned the policy specific, so in our review of some of the larger lot areas of the city, we realized that the lowest density zoning categories, the R1 A and B, still did not accurately accurately reflect some of the larger lots that we had. So we reworked those categories and now have an R1 A, B, C, D, and E, and remapped to reflect that. So a lot of the larger lot districts see a new category than they have today, but that is really to more accurately reflect what is on the ground. Here's just some examples of the educational zones and their unique circumstances. Often they have a very high impact around their edges in that they have a relationship with neighbors directly, but their interiors have almost no impact on the surrounding community because they're so, the campuses are so large. So that's a educational on the right and a hospital on the left. And on the left, you can see that Sinai Hospital. One side of it is right up against row houses, but the rest of it is really much more isolated from the neighborhood. This is an example of areas where we recommended the row house mixed-use overlay on the top, which is a new category to reflect these kind of districts where they're essentially residential. They do have storefronts and the desire for ground floor commercial, but also to maintain the structures that are there. This isn't for new construction. This is really an overlay on what's there and encourage the keeping the building as opposed to a standard commercial district, which would allow you to tear it down and just do your typical commercial building. There's also a detached mixed-use overlay that with very limited mapping there on Liberty Heights. And downtown has its own special zones to reflect the density and heights with some special sub-districts there in the color. This is just some screenshots from our website, which is still up, so you can review any of the map changes at your convenience. The upper right is the home page, and that blue box leads you to the Planning Commission amendments. The lower left is the downloadables tab, and you can see there is the place where it says review by address. So if you want to check individual properties, that you click on it and type in your property address, and it'll tell you what the zoning is today and what it's proposed to be. So that's just a very convenient way to look at it. And that is...
Okay, thank you. Guys, have any questions? I just want to announce that we are joined by Senator Pugh. I seen her come in. Senator? My senator? Yeah, okay. Does any of my colleagues have any amendments, map amendments?
Mr. Chairman, I have the following amendments at the request of constituents. 3400 Boston Street, amend to OR2. 3901 Dillon Street, amend to C2. 502, 504, and 510 South Castle Street, amend to C1. 2300 Fleet Street, amend to C1. And my prior amendment number 5, dealing with the area around the St. Stan's complex, remove 1721, 1723, and 1725 Alisana Street from amendment number 5. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. We're ready to go on to public testimony, and I just want to reiterate that the library closes at 8 o'clock, so if we could try to stay within that 3 minutes, because I really want everyone who's signed in to be able to testify. We will start with, and the microphone's up here to my right, Kathy Tellis.
Hello, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you.
Yeah, just tell us your name. So.
My name is Kathy Tellis, and I live on 2201 Bank Street. and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. I'm afraid I'm coming to this a little late, and so my comments are probably going to be fairly simplistic. I am concerned about keeping the kind of mood of Fells Point and the historic nature of it and the lower buildings and the density where it is, and not turning it into a different kind of feel such as Harbor East. And so I'm concerned about the height and density issues, which I think are brought about by C1 and C2 zoning. And I know on the map there are a number of areas. As I understand it, C1 allows for 60 feet height and C2 is 100 feet height, which could be right or wrong. I mean, this is what I'm getting in general from people. And so I'm really concerned about those kind of heights and the mood of the area there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ed Marcinko.
Hi, my name is Ed Marcinko, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
Like many people that'll probably speak today, I have concerns concerning some of these zoning amendments in the Fells Point, Canton area, particularly along Boston Street, Eastern Avenue, Broadway, and Alexander Street. This is a historic neighborhood. This area in Fells Point and along their outlying areas close to the area, it's been a historic neighborhood for years. People here, grandparents that are here, probably, like my parents, fought the road back in the 60s and the 70s. They built the charm for this historic neighborhood. We have to preserve this historic neighborhood. What I'm concerned about is, like what the previous lady said, the C1 and the C2 buildings along Boston Street, Alexander, Eastern Avenue, and Fleet Street. The Burger King lot on Eastern Avenue, the Royal Farm Store along Fleet Street. What I'm also concerned about is the amendments that go in. I know this process was in long running, and I know a lot of people lost a lot of interest, but apparently amendments are being brought in that the community associations are not aware of. We have a lot of community participants here tonight from various community associations that they deal with these issues all the time, and for them not knowing these amendments, it's very alarming to me. We are developing before we develop our infrastructure, and that's very concerning because of the traffic issues that we are seeing right now. We need a more balanced approach. Bigger is not better. Some of us remember the old urban renewal plan where that protected historic neighborhood like Fells Point. We were told many years ago, oh, don't worry, we're going to get rid of the urban renewal plan, but nothing's going to change. We're seeing changes now, and it's very alarming. So I hope you would take that in consideration about this historic neighborhood, both in Fells Point and in Canton. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Adams.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Good evening.
I live at 209 South Chester Street, which is right off of Pratt. And I don't know if any of you ran into some traffic coming over here tonight. One water main break wiped out the entire grid in Fells Point. And that's what we're dealing with. And my concern is the additional density and height that would be allowed by the C1 and C2. The existing 2.5 FAR can be a little deceptive because it makes it look like people could put tall buildings, but you have narrow, shallow lots. It's very hard to get anything tall in the area. Now, years ago when Mayor Schmoke was elected, I was appointed to the advisory committee to a commission run by George Notter, who was the immediate past president of the American Institute of Architects. He was hired by Kurt Schmoke to deal with height, density, and development issues on the waterfront. And he devised a master plan that basically said, you're going to have tall buildings that are pre-existing, and you want to taper down from them and retain the historic pattern of the neighborhoods. The amendments that I've seen are going to completely blow that up, and that's wrong. And also, the communities have not had the notice. We have a big turnout here. Most people in that neighborhood have no idea that anything's going to happen if these amendments are passed. And I think that people tell me that this thing needs to be passed by November for some reason.
That's not true.
Okay. We need to slow down the train. And there's a lot of collective intelligence in Fells Point. There's people on my block who could cut you open and transplant your organs. I think they could figure out a zoning code. So, and I think we need to have a community-oriented process because there's a lot of talent in this room, and there's a lot of talented people who know nothing about this. And it's almost 2 minutes and 10 seconds. That's pretty good.
You're good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Denise Whitman.
Hi, my name's Denise Whitman, and I live at 2042 Fountain Street. I'm going to speak globally about Fells Point and also about some specifics. Fells Point's a historic district. I think everybody here knows that. It's the second oldest historic district in the nation, right behind Boston, who was #1. And the highest buildings in our National Register Historic District are the Rec Pier, but that's a very unique building. And then the two following that are 55 feet. 55 feet, which are Marketplace and Henderson's Wharf. In the old urban renewal plan, I'm going to speak about two specific properties, 2030 Alisana Street. The maximum height for that property was 40 feet. In the old urban renewal plan, the maximum height for 2029 Alisana Street, the former Osiris parking lot, was 60 feet with an average height of 45 feet. 60 to 100 foot heights in C1 and C2 are inappropriate for the historic district. Inappropriate. The National Park Service has a list of 10 tenets on their website, the tenets of preservation. And that applies to all historic districts. And one of the tenets states that nothing should overshadow or be more prominent than the historic building or historic buildings. I guarantee it, 60 to 100 feet, these would be more prominent and would overshadow the local historic buildings that are 30 to 35 feet, 2- and 3-story Greek Revival and Italianate Victorian buildings. There's a movement, and it's very highly supported within the community, asking to bring back the urban renewal plan, because what we feel now is there are no protections for our historic buildings and in our historic district. So I'd like to ask you to eliminate the C1s and the C2s in our historic district because those heights are not appropriate.
Thank you, Denise. Douglas Armstrong. And after Douglas is Elizabeth Manning, and if I pronounce this right, is that Kurt Schiller? Douglas, go ahead.
Good evening. Douglas Armstrong, 2828 North Howard Street, 21218. I had previously, and some of my neighbors previously requested 2807 Crestmont Avenue to be rezoned from R10 to R7 in order to maintain the current density and height. However, this request, which was made in writing over a year ago, is not reflected on the current September 25th, 2015 map. This is disturbing, and I want to know how and when I and my neighbors will be able to see this request noted on the map. Also, I had requested to be notified when this amendment is to be voted on, and I'm asking how will that be addressed?
Your request is noted, and through the website, will, regards to the amendments, how we vote and the voting session will come through the.
So
Is that what
you'll
you're-
actually list what amendments are going to come up with property addresses and the.
Well, I don't know whether we're going to be in that detail. We haven't really discussed that.
Well,
right now.
that's what I'm asking
Yeah.
for, is it's not reflected here. The request was made well over a year
Well,
ago.
No, I
And-
mean, it's a legitimate question. This is very complicated. It's very large. We're working on this. So it just seems like every week we're trying to come up with rules and regulations regards to this. So, we have it noted what you're requesting, and we'll take it under consideration.
All right, fine. I like I said, I was a bit disappointed to see that it was not reflected on the
It's-
map.
Yeah, I mean, I think Councilman Kraft might have said it, and we say this at our hearing, this is a very complicated process, and I don't want to dwell on it because it's already been discussed. But we really want the transparency and the accountability. We really want to hear from people like you, Douglas, seriously, and other constituents, your concerns and your questions on how we are organizing this and how we're, so
Well, you've heard my concerns. I hope you
Yeah.
will act on the most key one,
Yeah.
which you heard just last week.
Will do. Elizabeth?
Yes. Good evening. I'm a little more off the cuff, so I apologize. My name is Elizabeth Manning. I live at 515 South Durham. I am in First District. I am an active member of FPRA and also a member of Fells Prospect, as randomly 2 different community associations claim me, actually 3. But I'm talking about Fells Point, as you're going to hear a lot today. And I have not found the process of TransForm Baltimore to be very transparent. We have had introductions at community meetings, more so about liquor zoning, but the stuff that's come up about Fells Point is very concerning. I also happen to work at an architecture firm, and the firm that did Marketplace at Fells Point. Those are great developers. They've worked with the community to maintain historic facades at great expense to themselves to fit the fabric of the neighborhood. I do not find the development that has been proposed and the zoning changes proposed to be of the same mindset. That particularly came into play with 2030 Alisana. It took me introducing on Facebook to many of our community members what a change in FAR would mean. There needs to be more outreach to the community for them to know what the changes are. If you've ever gone out by boat on the harbor, and if you look at Fells Point, if you look at the city, it's gorgeous. It staggers up towards Johns Hopkins. Building 60 to 100 foot buildings along the waterfront, along Alisana, completely destroys not only the fabric of the neighborhood, but our visitor experience. We don't want to be a cookie cutter city. We don't want to be a chain restaurant that you see the same thing everywhere you go. One of the most unique aspects of Baltimore City is the historic aspect of Fells Point, and we need to maintain that fabric. Thank you.
Thank you. It's Kurt and Martin Burien and Douglas Kaufman.
Kurt Schiller, 244 South Chapel Street. I reside in Upper Fells Point. I'm just going to reiterate basically what everybody else is saying. I feel very distressed that, we're considering putting up 100-foot buildings, in our neighborhood. We have a historic community, and we would like to keep it just as that, I don't have all the data that everybody else does, but I'm just very concerned as a citizen of this city that, we feel that's appropriate to do in a historic neighborhood. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Martin, and then it's Douglas.
Hi. So I'm going to do something a little
Please
different.
tell us your name.
My name is Martin Burien. I am not going to talk about Fells Point, actually, so all the folks here can for 3 minutes. So I'm from Hamden, and I am on the Zoning and Land Use Committee for the Hamden Community Council. Our neighborhood meeting was canceled, unfortunately, so therefore I'm coming to another meeting. Specifically, I wanted to address 3 properties, 3900 Cairns Lane, 3901 Conduit Avenue, and 3925 Conduit Avenue. So these are currently, two of those properties are zoned commercial today, B2, I think. One is residential R6. And Planning Commission has proposed an amendment to zone those to industrial, which is the equivalent of manufacturing today. So, and I come before the distinguished members to request that the council reject the proposed amendments by Planning Commission and maintain a commercial or residential zoning for those three parcels. We find that the neighborhood is tending more towards a residential nature at this time. And in addition, we feel that the industrial zoning is not in keeping even with the current uses in the commercially zoned parcels that are currently there now. And we urge the council to maintain either residential or a commercial zoning for those three parcels. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Martin. Douglas Kaufman? No? Okay. Christy Pazival and Raymond Blackensheim, Blackensheim, and also Victor Corbin. I apologize if I tear your name up. But my last name, Reisinger, I get beat up too, so.
My name is Christy Posaval. I live at 2040 Fountain Street, and I've been to a couple meetings, first-time testifier. I'd like to say that the process is interesting. You haven't rezoned since 1971.
Right.
I understand and enjoy Fells Point. I enjoy that it was a manufacturing neighborhood at one point. I love the boats that still come through. It's very interesting. But it seems like for the zoning, you just took the manufacturing zoning and gave it new letters and numbers, but it still has the same height and meaning as the manufacturing zoning, but you'll just have residence instead of manufacturing. So it's a little different, but it seems like you should really make the zoning more of a historical zone rather than height zoning for density. And I'd also like to add on a personal note, 2030 Alisana is supposed to be built right in front of my house. And while Alisana's a main street, Fountain Street is 2 blocks long. One block is supposed to be C2, C1, R10. I have no idea how tall the building will be, but that building will be on one block, and it will have at least 100 parking spaces the first time we heard about it, but now the zoning's gone up, so it'll probably be more parking. I'll constantly have garage doors shutting in front of my house and headlights in my bedroom. Shocking. I mean, that is not a historical district at all. I would never have moved to that neighborhood had I don't mind losing my view. I live by a parking lot. I want it to be developed. But that's pretty outrageous. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Christy. Raymond?
My name is Ray Blankenheim. I live over at 233 South Collington Avenue. I'm also here as the Land Use and Development Chair for Fowles Prospect, in which I've been serving at that position since May of this year. I wanted to bring you to our neighborhood. Our neighborhood is a neighborhood where we've all decided to move in and put our lives, work, and sweat into it. We rehabbed our homes. We worked with local police, and it's become the gem that it is now. This neighborhood is Upper Fowles Point, but we also enjoy Fowles Point. We go there, and we also work closely with West Canton. We call ourselves Fowles. We work hard. At the end of the day, we enjoy each other's company and light and breeze and air. We spent a lot of time working with allies to develop our corridor along the waterways in which we all enjoy the chance to walk and enjoy community. When I first got introduced to this TransForm Baltimore, I agree with a lot of the positions. I agree that the liquor laws need to be strengthened, that home ownership, as far as home businesses goes, There's a lot of good things in TransForm Baltimore, and I believe in periodic rezoning. But I once was president back in 2004, 2005, 2006. I worked underneath the Urban Renewal Plan. We had lots of good developments that came up. We worked hard to bring Fleet Street, a lot of good developments across from the Sip and Bite. We negotiated with good folks like you. I tried to find the good in a lot of the mappings, and I'm trying to represent my neighborhood. One thing that I try to do is make sure that we are represented and that we are heard. So, as Mark Adams suggests, I think we need to slow down the train a little bit. A lot of these things are new to us. The mappings in particular, the concepts are fine, but we need to slow down a little bit, work with us. We have a lot of talent, a lot of good ideas on how we can zone, and we will work with you together. We will not fall asleep at the helm. This is the word I give to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Victor, then Anita, Adia, and Marty Beeman. Yeah, Marty Beeman. Okay, go ahead, Victor.
I have a couple concerns. I got pulled into this because of 2030 Alisana Street. And as I've started to look more closely to the map, what concerns me is that the map doesn't reflect the current usage. I went to the last hearing in Federal Hill last week, and I asked Lori Feinberg, I said, did any of you walk these streets? And she said no. And I said, look at Eastern Avenue as an example. If you look at Eastern Avenue from Chester Street to Patterson Park Avenue and you actually walk it today, a lot of those buildings are not commercial anymore. They've all been converted to residential. I also went down towards Tockerman's. There's 4 properties there. They're all being converted from commercial to residential. Then if you go down to Alisana Street by Register Street, that's a whole new development, all residential, yet on the map it's C1. When I asked her and brought this up to her after the hearing was over, she said, well, just make an amendment. So what am I supposed to do? Your job? You guys have been doing this for 4 years. Not one planner has actually walked down and said what house is now commercial, what's commercial that is now gone residential. It makes no sense to me. 50% of this, or close to 50% of these businesses no longer exist, and they're all being converted. There's 2 properties. I called a friend of mine who owns 2 properties on Eastern Avenue, and I said, congratulations. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, you just got rezoned up. And he's like, I'm residential. And I said, not anymore. I said, maybe you can tear down your houses. They're not historic, and now you can go 6 stories tall. I said, so the whole process doesn't make sense to me. I'm not going to talk about Fells. I do believe that there should be a commission put together and that there should be an overlay. It makes sense. And that the C1 and the C2 do not reflect the height limits that we currently have today.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Anita Bhatia, 418 South Chapel Street. And my major interest is not a property that's in Fells Point proper. I wanted to put forth a request for a property I own on the 300 South block of Eden Street, 316 South Eden. That area is predominantly commercial. It's bordered to the south by the tack factory and to the north by an auto body repair shop. And it was zoned M3 when I purchased it. It was rezoned B2. So I believe that the other properties around it are C1, so I have a piece of paper that I filled out for that. I had 2 other ones, and they fit the same profile as that one, is that when I purchased them, they were zoned commercial, and then these were also rezoned R8, but those amendments have already been put forth. I would say that my concern is a little bit different from other people's, I think, in the room that have spoken so far, is that my concern is moving a lot of these properties that were commercial to residential, because even if a property is not being used commercially now, the potential to be commercial is important. And I don't want to address the height issue. That one's beyond, my expertise. I do believe that in some areas we do need to increase density because we need to bring younger people here to live. If we want to revitalize this city, I think that we need that. I'm a landlord. My tenants are young, and they bring a lot of life and money to this city. So in some ways, increased density can be a good thing. I think it's important that we retain commercial zoning. In particular, Victor mentioned that block on Eastern Avenue, which is just north of a property of mine. On the whole other side of the street, it's zoned to be C1. On the other side, they moved it residential, and parts of it are commercial, which I don't understand. I think that whole block really should have been commercial, because we need businesses. Because I'm telling you, I don't want to live here if there aren't any businesses. Okay, I got to put up with noise and all kinds of things, and I live here in Fells Point because I can walk to businesses. I think they're important.
All right, so you want to see it to C1 from R8?
I'm R8 right now.
You're R8 right now, 502, 504.
Yeah, those are the 502 Street.
Okay. Okay, I got it. Thank you. Marty?
Marty Bement, 1920 Bank Street. I'm a residential builder and developer. Been involved in Fells Point since the early 80s. I was the lead partner in the development of the Admiral Fell Inn. I developed a residential development at the corner of Bank Street and South Broadway we call Taylor's Row. 6 historic buildings, 3 of them on the National Register of Historic Places. Liz and I just recently moved back to Fells Point after raising our children out in the county. And we're at 1920 Bank Street since June. I also have a very large concern with the C1 and C2 designations. I think there can be, there probably is more flexibility in the language, and there are probably some good things, but the heights are completely wrong for this historic district. One of the things I think about is our waterfront community in a lot of ways mirrors Annapolis. Annapolis is about 100 years older. They probably have a 350-year historic village, and we have a 250-year historic village, but both are predominantly 18th and 19th century, 2.5 to 3-story buildings. The land sloping in Annapolis gently from, say, State Circle to the city docks. None of us here could imagine that in Annapolis there would be a 6 to 10-story monolithic building right across the street from city docks. Excuse me, I don't speak publicly very much. It just wouldn't happen. And one of the reasons that happens is, in addition to zoning, they have height restrictions. I talked to their preservation office today to confirm what I'm going to be telling you. And it works something like this. The properties like across from city docks would either be 32 or 38 feet in height. As you move away and up the hill, it could get to as much as 45, but that's the absolute limit. That works for them. It should work for us. We should have height limits. The National Trust for Historic Places, and anybody with a lot of experience in this knows that historic districts are the heart and soul of our cities, and enough people have given some color to that. So that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Thanks, Marty. The next 3 is Jacob Green, Melanie Hood Wilson, and David Johnson. Jacob Green? Yeah. So who, go ahead, just introduce yourself to your...
Greg Grenier, 611 Reservoir.
Are you on here?
I am
Well, I'm trying to be respectful to the
Well,
crowd.
and
so
the
it's-
three of us are together, that's all. I'm just saying. And mine is an introduction, and they'll go from there.
Okay.
So
go
it just
ahead.
only makes sense. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, and the board. I'm representing a group called Friends of Reservoir Hill.
Okay.
And we are a new group that has pulled the neighborhood all together. There's a lot of little neighborhoods in Reservoir Hill, and there's a lot of stuff going on there right now. We've got people telling us there's a tunnel coming through soon. We've got people telling us that there's an 8.2 acre area of development called Madison Park North, which is being demolished, and there's new things coming in there. And among other things, and the state center is not far away, and there's more reconstruction there. What we want to say is that we actually welcome this. Unlike some of the people who have spoken earlier, we don't have anywhere to walk to. We don't have anywhere to get to. We are stuck in our homes once we get there, and a lot of these people want to meet each other. That's why we formed this one group to pull everybody together. And that has happened. About 5 days ago, we heard about this particular meeting, and we gathered our forces and had a meeting Monday night. And thank you, Lori Feinberg, for coming. She gave us the introduction and stayed for a couple hours and explained everything to the large group that was there as well. We then went back and polled them. We took the people through social media that we could contact, those in-house people, and we made clear everything, the notes that were at that meeting. Sent it out to them. Everybody was asked to respond so that we could come here tonight with some results of what they heard and what they would like to have done. It was a very diverse group, as Lori can attest to. We had people from their 20s, which are going to be following me, and people in their 70s, which I am. So, and we had every race there that could possibly be. So it wasn't just a group of some people. And we all agreed that we would welcome innovation, we would welcome creativity to come into our neighborhood, give us something that we could get to without having to get in the car and go someplace. You get home, or during the day, you would love to do that. The other thing is we are very, very much into jobs coming to our neighborhood as well. We're not far from Mondawmin or the fateful CVS. We would love to have some people come in there and go to work, have something in their basement or some offices or whatever we can get. Please come in and help us to enjoy our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ash? Who's going to give you the results of...
Well, yeah, just come up and, since you have a group, what is your name?
My name is Ash Smith. I live in Reservoir Hill as well. Do forgive the how we are out of order. We signed one after another, but Jacob Green was on the first page.
That's why I'm trying to be respectful.
Yes, sir.
Calling those people who testified. So I don't know where you're at on this.
I am on the page. I got here at 5:30. So in front of you is a map that we have put together for Reservoir Hill, and I was going to go over each individual section about what we talked about on Monday. For the most part, we were very happy with all the residential zones R7 and R8. But beyond that, we want to really focus on commercial, as my counterpart Greg Grenier said. Since the initial proposal, which was done in 2012, a lot has happened in our community. We have a new cafe. We have at least $5 million of private investment to redevelop 2 apartment complex. Since then, another business has been coming into the neighborhood, which is called Tune Up City. Marty Cadigan of Tune Up City, he is one of the private investors, and he wants to zone his section as industrial mixed use, which is circled on there. It is on the intersections of Whitelock and Park Avenue. Beyond there, right across the street is an open space designation that is 706 Whitelock. We also would like to have that designated as R7, so it can be anticipation of parking for his commercial institution to use. The St. Francis Neighborhood Center, which is one of the only neighborhood centers in our community, services 40 children in our community and outside. They're starting their capital campaign, which they're trying to raise $3.2 million, which we hope will spur further development along our neighborhood. They are requesting C1 for all of their addresses and their expansion areas. And then beyond that, we would like to return our C1 designation to our historically commercial corridor, which was torn down in the 90s because crime has gotten so bad. Everyone is supportive of the idea of returning commercial corridor to our neighborhood so we can have something to walk to. Beyond that, Marty Cadigan Flanagan and the St. Francis Neighborhood Center, and a handful, if not majority of neighbors want that business to return. Beyond there, there's a little section on Linden Avenue, just west of the St. Francis Neighborhood Center. It's Linden Avenue and Whitelock Street. The southwest corner and the southeast corner are vacant lots. We also would like to have those proposed as C1. And the best thing about the whole Whitelock corridor, it's all city-owned and vacant properties. Beyond there, there's North Avenue. North Avenue is on the surge of coming back. We want our portion to be considered walkable, just like Pennsylvania Avenue, just like Station North. We are a quarter a mile away from the light rail station, and we are half a mile away from Pennsylvania Avenue Metro Station. We would like that to be designated as TOD-4 to allow us to have the most flexibility for new development that is coming. Madison Park North is a huge section and complex. It's going to be torn down. We want to make sure that the most possible flexibility for that new development is there. We are in well talks with the developer and the owner's representative. No developer has been chosen yet. We want to make sure they have the flexibility. The last bit is Drew Park Lake Drive. Our parkfront, lakefront property is still vacant and city-owned. We chose C5 knowing good and well that was designated for downtown, but again, it promotes that flexibility that we desperately need and the height restrictions. You have to build high enough to view downtown, to view the park, to view the lake. We want to make sure that we have that opportunity because the west side needs this development. And what happens in our neighborhood is going to continue transitioning to the west where those riots started. So again, thank you for allowing me to speak. I definitely will be at the next one because we need jobs. We need to really work on our community.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
I'm not the third guy. Is there a third one? Okay, there you go.
Who is Jacob?
I'm Jacob.
You're Jacob? Okay. We're back on track.
All right.
Jacob. Okay.
I'm Jacob Green. I'm the board president of the Mount Royal Community Development Corporation. Our catchment area is the Reservoir Hill, Bolton Hill, Madison Park, and Marble Hill. We consider ourselves the gateway to the west side, and I'd like to thank the Community Association Friends of Reservoir Hill for the work they've done on putting this map together. I would like to fully express our support for the zoning changes they are recommending. I would like to stress the importance that the eyes of the world are on Baltimore and the Baltimore's west side. How we handle the recovery on the west side is going to be with us for the next 50 to 100 years. It's time we bring real economy to that area. This zoning map is the first step in that process. We have invaluable resources, as you can see on the TOD section.
Yeah.
This is approximately 12 acres of land on what used to be one of Baltimore's most historic main corridors. When the city was designed, this was one of the main corridors, the place to be. We are actively attracting large businesses, as well as an innovative economy by working with all the neighborhood associations around, as well as MICA, Coppin, UB, and the other institutions around there, to bring real economy to that area. Zoning is that first step. I would also like to point out the parcels along Druid Park Lake Drive. Druid Park Lake Drive lots are set up to be iconic spaces, iconic buildings. You already have 15-story buildings over there. If we're looking to attract world-class talent and world-class businesses to move into this area, that's the location where you can say you want to put your headquarters right there. I would encourage you, that's why we chose C5, both for the height as well as the flexibility, because it may not be that R10 is the best use. We may want more than 10% residential in that area. So I will leave it up to you guys to find out what is the best use for that, but in our estimation, it's C5. That's what our our city planners that we've contracted and work with have suggesting for those areas. And finally, for the residential area, it's important that we keep that residential feel. It's important that you have a live and work area. And that's why we're asking you to bring back that corridor, and that movement has already started. We'd like the businesses that have started to move in are asking that you continue that zoning and not take away their business designation along that corridor. My time is up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
There's only one of me. I'm David Johnson.
You're David Johnson?
Yeah.
Okay, and
I can
don't
speak
forget
3 times,
Melanie
yeah.
Wilson, Melanie Hood Wilson.
Okay. Okay, I'm David Johnson. I live in Fell Street in Fells Point. I have been a resident for 9 years. I'm on the board of the Residents Association, and we're all very concerned about this height thing, among others. I think our member Beth Manning was really pretty eloquent on that. It's not just about height and fitting in with the historic district. There also is a component that really has hit Fells Point and our neighboring places of density. And I know people debate that, but sometimes things that come posing as progress aren't progress. Like, progress is not sitting in a traffic jam every day trying to get home. That's not progress, and it's not. It's not evolution, it's devolution. The city is not moving forward. And I saw an example of this. Well, also progress. Here's another one. Progress is not hearing one of my neighbors say he has to tell his 9-year-old son he can't do after-school soccer because dad can't get home from the office to pick him up and get to Patterson Park. That's not progress. That's going to send people to the county. That's, okay, what else did I want to say? I had the opportunity of attending a city council meeting back in May, and it was the one in which Jim Kraft presented the fact that Bozzuto is going to build, who already built a big place in Fells Point. They're going to build a huge place with 300 or 400 cars on Caroline and Lancaster, and I was dismayed to hear that not one voice on the city council said, "What's that going to do to the traffic?" It's not even on your radar. Do you guys not drive the same streets we drive? You have helicopters or something? I mean, really, it's the situation at Fells Point is bad and getting worse. You know, I made a short movie on it that sort of got the problem. But, and thank you all for doing the work you're doing, but please understand that Baltimore is moving backwards, I think. I don't think it's moving forwards, or it's stuck in neutral. I guess that's what I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Melanie Hood Wilson. I have been a Fells Point resident for the last 15 years. I'm currently raising 2 children in Fells Point. I live at 600 South Ann Street. And I'm here tonight to deliver a statement on behalf of Zeke Cohen, who was unable to attend because of a conflicting fundraiser he had for his nonprofit. To the members of the Zoning Board and to the residents of Baltimore, although I could not attend the meeting tonight, I am here with you in spirit. I firmly believe that community engagement and full citizen participation are the keys to moving our city forward. Without the voices of our citizens in this process, we will remain stuck in our current quagmire. That is why I've decided to speak here tonight. Like many residents, I am frustrated by the disrespect I feel from our city leaders who have sought to lift height restrictions from buildings in our historic Fells Point. I am frustrated that amendments were put into the TransForm plan without seeking consultation from our community groups, and I am frustrated by the lack of transparency in all of this. Let me be clear. I am not against development. I am not against growth. In fact, I believe that our city needs to grow. Over the past 50 years, Baltimore has lost 1/3 of its citizens, and without expanding our tax base, we won't be able to get the schools and city services that we need and deserve. And I believe that density is what makes cities great. I support many of the goals outlined in the TransForm plan. But we need to grow smart. We need to grow in underserved areas that are starved for development. We should look to spaces near I-95 that could accommodate high-rise buildings. We do not need to grow in historic Fells Point. We do not need to grow anywhere without a workable plan to accommodate the increased density and commuter traffic from folks that live in the county and work in Harbor East and Harbor Point. Frankly, I don't blame the residents for feeling cynical. They were asked to participate in the process and offer input into the Complete Streets plan, but 4 years later, it seems like elected officials and city planners didn't bother to read the plan. Or they just didn't care. Because when I look around at the failing roads, choking congestion, inadequate public transportation, and non-existent bike lanes and walking paths, I can't help but feel that we've been bamboozled. I have listened to the residents of Fells Point, and they have said loud and clear, enough is enough. I fully support the efforts to maintain the historic quality of Fells Point, and I look forward to a more transparent and community-focused dialogue moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanne Massopust and Bob Martha. How you doing?
Well, I'm going to have to readjust this because I have height challenges. Okay, so... What, you want me to say I'm short? Anyway, my name is Joanne Massopust. I live in the 700 block of South Register Street, where I have lived since October the 1st of 1979. It is a small 2.5-story home on a street with no parking that was built sometime in the late 1800s. When I moved into the neighborhood, it actually was very walkable. We had an affordable grocery store. We had 2 drugstores. We had a functioning, affordable market in Broadway, and we had a library. We've since lost all of those things. And why? We've lost them for a lot of different reasons. One of the things that I think I want to bring to your attention, I'm sorry if my remarks are a little disjointed, but as people have spoken, I have tried to make notes about some other things I wanted to say. Just for the record, the Fells Point area was rezoned between 2006 and 2007. So it's not like we haven't been zoned since 1971. The other thing that I want to say is that when I moved into the neighborhood, I actually fell in love with what I experienced as a European village dynamic, where I could walk, where I could do affordable grocery shopping, where I could meet my neighbors all over the place. Over the years, there's been a slow, insidious erosion of the historic character and integrity of the Fells Point National Historic District. In the name of progress and development. But the historic character is what makes Fells Point a unique neighborhood and should be preserved at all costs. We can have progress and development in ways that reflect that. One of the things that has been said a lot of times is that CHAP and the BMZA will protect us. What we're finding in practicality is that neither of those things are true. There is no requirement for developers to come back to community organizations when they change their minds or change their plans, and that leaves the community out of the whole process. What we are advocating for, and I'm cutting my remarks a little bit short because I see I'm running out of time, what we're advocating for is one of 2 things. Either legislation to be reintroduced to reinstate the urban renewal plan, or in the alternative that there be an overlay for the federal historic district for Fells Point that would incorporate the guidelines and protections that were provided by the urban renewal plan. I think it's simplistic to say that CHAP or some of the other organizations are going to protect us. We all know what that means in terms of fighting. The BMZA is not a friend to residents. In order for what you're doing by saying that the 100-foot rule is conditional use, what that does is it places incredible burden on all of the residents here to follow the process and to be willing to go down and fight it, because conditional use, as many of us know, is often just routinely granted by the BMZA. So I am begging you, as a longtime resident, I'm also besides being a resident, I'm president of the Fells Point Community Organization, but I'm mostly here because I've been a resident for so long, and I'm just begging you to preserve, to do whatever you need to do to work with us to preserve the National Historic District of Fells Point, to eliminate C2 from our area and a lot of the C1s, because they just don't reflect the historic nature of this community. Thank you.
Barbara McCarthy. Bob Martha.
Oh, that's me, okay.
What?
That's a tough one to follow. I'm Bob Math. I live at 2040 Fountain Street in Fells Point, and I'm new to Baltimore. I just moved here about a year and a half ago.
Welcome.
And thank you very much. I love this town. This is a great town. I moved here from Chicago, and I think it gets a bad rap in some of the press, and I moved here, and I think it's terrific. And I could have moved pretty much to any neighborhood I wanted. I looked up at Mount Vernon. I looked up at Hampton. They got the artist thing going on up there. Looked in Harbor East, and they've got the condos and the tall buildings, and downtown. You got everything. Got all this stuff. And I picked Fells Point because of what she was talking. It's like the Europeans. It's like the charm. I saw it on the bench. Charm City. I signed up for it. Charm City. I loved it. That's great. Okay. So now, you know, I live right across the 2030 Alisana, you know, and all of a sudden, I hear that you're going to build a 100-foot building there. Well, that's not charming. You know, you're going to change the whole thing. Now, you want to get people to come here. I moved here from Chicago, and I picked Fells Point for that reason, because it was charming. All right? Now, Fells Point is working. As I understand it, it's growing, right? We have more people moving into this town. Let's not screw it up. Earlier on, we put the criteria for zoning, right? One thing I didn't see on there, don't screw up what's working. Fells Point is working. Now, I'm not against development. And one of the interesting things, somebody said, you know, I want students and artists and things like that. I do too. I don't want to go out and have a beer with a bunch of rich guys all the time. I want to sit down with a student or an artist, a very diverse neighborhood. I think that's terrific. Let's get creative in how to make that happen in the neighborhood. In Chicago, they figured it out. Like in 2030 Alisana, what they would have made them do there, okay, build your houses in character with the neighborhood, but 20% of those houses should be low income. Or 20% of those houses should be priced so people can move into them. Let's get creative. Let's not build a 100-foot building so people can afford to live in 100 stories and dump 500 cars right in front of my house where there's already traffic. I walk the dog. I'm going to get run over pretty soon. There's going to be road rage pretty soon. The traffic is terrible there. So all I ask you is don't screw it up. Think about it and do the right thing. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Dan Harrison and Deborah Tapera.
I don't think this third time is going to be the charm here, but I'll do the best I can. This is real narrowcasting. My name is Dan Harrison. I live at 1903 Bank Street. I've lived there for 25 years. There's a tavern next door. It's been there for 100 years. My home's been there for 110 years. Last night I learned that the owner may want to go for commercial zoning. Going for was a 6-day license, wants a 7-day license. I'm scared to death. I need to sleep at least 6 hours a night. Maybe I can live on 6, can't live on 5. So as long as it's not going to happen, I'll give my time to somebody else. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Deborah, and then Mara Marderwisky. Huh? Yeah, okay. So I'm terrible. Go ahead.
I'm Deborah Temper, and I live at 960 Fells Street. I would like to hear you say and put on record again that you stated that 1721 through 1725 Alisana Street, that amendment has been pulled.
Amendment 5.
Okay, so they're pulled out. Thank you. So, in a way, that's great for me, but maybe bad for you because now I have time to spend on other stuff. Anyway.
You would anyhow.
Yes, that's true. Okay. All right. Okay, everyone talked about the C1 and the C2 about being dangerous for our neighborhood, and I think what they meant was of lots and also insignificant historical buildings. So I'm going to give you a list of all the lots and the insignificant buildings that I see. We focused a lot on the east side of Fells Point, but we need to go back to the west side of Fells Point as well. The 600 block of South Carolina Street, the 600 block of Bond Street, 603 South Bond Street, 1710 South Bond Street, 1930 actually Alizana Street, 1508 Fleet Street, 1515 Fleet Street, 1520 Fleet Street, 1530 Fleet Street, 1602 Fleet Street, 1614 Fleet Street. So these basically are enormous full city blocks, a few of them. 600 South Bond Street is an entire block. 603 South Bond Street is an entire block. All the others are pretty significant as well. The zoning on these, I believe, were IMU on some of them. It looks like something was downzoned to a C-2. A lot of these are being amended to C-2 or a C-1. They're big, and it would definitely bring Harbor East into our neighborhood, and without a height restriction, it wouldn't be good. We have also, on the other side, the current, where's my current amendments?
Okay.
Debbie, will you give all those addresses to Emily when you get finished?
Oh, all these addresses?
The
Okay,
addresses
I
you're
could.
talking about to Emily when you.
All right. My map amendment page is missing. Did I leave it on my chair, a map amendment page? I did? Oh. Oh, there we go. Okay. I found it. Okay, current map amendments that are also lots and that are being zoned after planning recommended a little different. 511-531 South Carolina Street. The last map stated to recommend from planning was a R8. It's now, a map amendment was introduced to be a C-1. Unfortunately, it's a large lot, but it's sad because it sits behind the Fredless Douglass homes on South Dallas Street. Those poor people will have no more sun and shade, and I probably won't either in the 500 block of South Bond Street. 1721 oh, that's me, that's been taken care of. 2121 Alizana Street's amended to a C-2. 2030 Alizana Street amended to C-2. 2127 Boston Street amended to C-2. 2033 Eastern Avenue is down zoned to a C-1 from a C-2. 2050 Fleet Street's amended to a C-1 down from a C-2. These are all big lots. Also, we have Belts Wharf, which starts on Wolf Street to and then goes around to the 2100 block of Alizana Street. That's all waterfront, and I believe that's C-2. So basically, I just wanted to present this as a hell of a lot of area. To me, it is like the highway coming through. I mean, I don't need to say, I think everybody iterated what all this land at a C-1 or C-2. Now, I'm a C-1, I want to keep my C-1, but I'm a building that can't change, and I'm respectful of that. It's for the usage, not for the height thing. These people will have no program, and then you'll say, well, it's going to be a factory for a long time. What about in 5 or 10 years when maybe the factory's going to go? Maybe Inner Harbor East wants to start encroaching in our area. You guys, by this TransForm Baltimore, is giving them the tools to be able to accomplish that in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. Make sure.
You want to give me the list? So the only
Just
thing...
give us the list, Ed.
Yeah, I have to write it a little bit better because I really didn't expect to get it. So here's my closing statement. This was written by Thomas Jefferson in 1787. The basis of our government is the opinion of the people. And he would say today, not the developers for profit.
Mayor? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Mara Majorowicz. I live on the 500 block of South Register Street. Just to give you an idea what I'm bordered by, Eastern Avenue is above me, Fleet Street is below me, Register Street is parallel to Broadway. I've lived in that house since 1986, and the house itself is historic, 1829. The block was originally zoned B2, and it's being changed to C1. I did get paperwork when it was being zoned B2, but when it was changed to C1, I haven't gotten nothing. No paperwork, nothing. This is my first meeting. I did bring a visual here. What I'm concerned about is my block has been bulk zoned C1. Now, I'm a resident. I'm not commercial. I'm resident. And there's a couple of other people on my block that are also resident. And the commercial properties on Fleet, they have people living above, and they're also resident. My major concern is the fire that happened there 2 years ago in 2012. It's massive. And I survived that fire twice. And now that lot is a big, open, empty lot. And I'm going to give you a visual. Okay, so right next to my house, my 35-foot house, can now have a 60-foot building. No? Okay, now the reason I bought my house, and this is to be my retirement home, was for the great backyard. Well, if you put a building that high right next to my building, I'm going to be living in a cave.
Just under the current zoning, B22, that size can have a building much higher than 60 feet. Under the current zoning.
Under the current zoning.
Much higher than 60.
Well, what was there originally was... What was there? Yeah. Well, I don't understand why I'm a resident in the middle of the block and I'm not zoned R8 like everybody across the street is. Okay. All right, so my last thing is I'm really concerned about infrastructure for this area. I've lived here long enough to see all the traffic, and I'm worried about all the uses of water and the thousands of flushing toilets. So thank you.
Thank you. We have, if you have any questions, before the library closes, we have planning staff here that can answer some of the questions or concerns. So I think the next person is, what I have here is Sandra Sales.
I'm not Sandra.
No, you're not Sandra.
I'm not Sandra. I waived mine before, but could I come back? Is that okay?
Yeah. What is your name? You were?
My name is Doug Kaufman. Doug Kaufman, 3216 O'Donnell Street. I'm here representing the Canton Community Association and obviously myself.
Yeah, here it is. Okay.
Thank you.
Doug Kaufman, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, just real quick comment. Overall, I think one of the problems that so many of us have with the zoning process is that zoning is a tactic. We don't understand the strategy. So we have a great city. I love living here. I've been in the city for 10 years. And when you have something great, you want to share it. I want more people to be here. I want the city to get back well above the 622,000 people that are here now. We were 1.3 million before World War II or around that time. It'd be wonderful to get there. I want more people to be here so we can, quite frankly, pay for the running of this city. But there's no strategic vision for what we're trying to accomplish and where we're trying to send development and which kind of development. And if I understand this process has been long, I don't envy you, quite frankly. And it's gone through 2 mayoral candidates or administrations and maybe soon to a third. But where's the vision? Where are we trying to send which kind of development? That will flavor everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandra Sales.
Sandra Sales, 2201 East Pratt Street. The only thing that I think I can say that has not already been eloquently said is I'd like you to realize the diamond that you have that starts at the waterfront and is the historic Fells Point, Canton area, and then goes up the hill. And 30 years ago, we talked about this with zoning, and they realized that was true. they were going to ring the harbor with 10-story buildings and devalue everything behind it, and changed their mind then. And I think you can change your mind again and realize that you are missing a best bet by not celebrating the communities that you've got and the interest that you've got and people who want to see this all succeed and really feel that you would be sticking it to them if you continued with your C1 and your C2s. And I didn't think I'd have a chance to say this, but the Bolton Hill and Reservoir people have given me the opportunity. You know what you can do with your C1 and your C2. There are neighborhoods who want them. So please, listen to the people who care about their communities and want them to succeed.
Thank you, Chief. Lewis McDonald.
Good evening. My name is Luis McDonald, and I am the owner of 1206 Ridgely Street. It's a commercial property in your District 10, and it's about 15,000 square feet, 3 floors, 5,000 square feet on each floor. I've had a business on the first and second floor for the last 10 years. Can't really do much on the third floor because of the current zoning. Current zoning is M2, and your bill is proposing for I1, and I'm in opposition to that. I would like it to go to IMU for mixed use. I have actually been testifying for the past 5 years at all the hearings for TransForm Baltimore. I've also been meeting with the planning office and everybody in City Hall on this issue. I've gotten approval from the commission, the Planning Commission, on amendment number 120, where they recommended mixed use as well. I also have emails and letters from city staff saying that they also agreed and would recommend mixed use. I would like your support so that you can have the bill and the legislation passed for mixed use at that property.
Okay. Let me say this, because this is he's the example of what I was going to say later on, is that the planning department, over the years they've worked on this, what they did is a football analogy, they ladled the ball to the city council. So what I'm saying to this group tonight and to my constituent is that we, like tonight and the other hearings we had regards to the text, and now we're doing the maps, that we need to hear from you, like tonight. So when this gentleman says to me that he wants to change his zoning, okay, I'm going to listen to him as a council person, not because he's standing there, but I know what he needs done. So that's how I'm going to respond, and that's how, like with what was that? Remington, not Remington. Yeah. The other, yeah, they came here, so whoever the council person is, or who your council person is, you need to talk to them and say, hey, I live here, whatever your neighborhood is, and say, this is what we want. This is what my community wants. I'm not giving you a political speech. We represent you. You see Councilman Kraft is sitting here, he's taking all the notes. Sharon Green Middleton had to leave for another community meeting. You need to talk to us because, no offense to the planning department, the buck stops with us. So if we don't hear from you, we don't know. We don't have a crystal ball. So I have it here after the meeting. I'll talk to you. But I've had a lot of businesses and residents in my district call me. I've met with them at community associations, and they said, Councilman, we don't want this. This is what we need. I got to listen to them. I don't listen, no offense, I don't listen to the planning department or any agency. It's what the community wants. So you can see that Councilman Kraft is taking notes. You need to talk to your councilman. And if you have any, if you have any questions or concerns, you have the planning department department here. They got 3 people here on staff that you can talk to them. So thank you.
Thank you.
Presented those statements tonight. That's talking to you.
I know. Well, that's why I'm listening. We're listening. If you understand what I'm saying, that each council person, you got to talk to your council person. The next person is Josh Neiman.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. My name is Josh Neiman. I live at 5509 South Bend Road, which is in Mount Washington. I am here to testify about 1900 East Lombard Street, which is in Councilman Branch's district and is bordering both the Upper Fells Point neighborhood as well as Washington Hill as well as Butchers Hill. I am one of 2 contract purchasers of this property. It is the Old St. Michael's Church Historic Complex. It's comprised of 4 buildings, a rectory, the sanctuary, the girls' school, and the assembly hall. My request is that property is currently proposed to be zoned as R8. Our request is to rezone it as to C1. It is 2 blocks to the east of Broadway and across the street from the Washington Hill PUD. We have been working with both the Upper Fells Community Association and the Butchers Hill Community Association on a covenant. The reason for C1 request is because the sanctuary itself, as well as the Assembly Hall, they're all historic properties, but those buildings, because of the volume of the buildings, we cannot break those up into apartments and still do it as a historic tax credit proposal. We've submitted our historic tax credit application to the Park Service. The Butchers Hill Association and Upper Fells, both of whom are here, are in support of this. We would enter into our covenants prior to the legislation being changed, and the covenants that we have discussed limit the uses from C1 to those uses, about 30 uses that we want the ability to do in those buildings, as well as have strict restrictions on parking to meet the neighborhood parking needs. There are a handful of other ones as well, but those are what we're working with the community on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Janice Kaufman. Jennifer.
My name is Janice Kaufman. I live at 233 South Collington Avenue in Fells Prospect. I think it's pretty clear based on what we've heard, a lot of testimony in our district to our city councilman, Councilman Kraft. We are asking you, you know what we want, these height restrictions lowered in our historic areas. We do not want to lose our view and our air. We're asking for you to honor councilmatic courtesy and listen to your constituents and the residents of this community. Fells Point and Fells Prospect in Canton is overdeveloped because the council does not listen to what the residents are asking for. You have just said that you're going to listen to what the constituents and the residents are saying in this meeting, and we are imploring you that you do so. That's about it.
James Quigley and Scott Goldman. Is there James Quigley? No? Scott?
Evening. Scott Goldman. I'm 700 South Montford.
Good evening.
Just wanted to reiterate what Bob said. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. On top of that, I just want to address an underlying issue that I don't think we discussed much, although Joanne mentioned at one point. The reason a lot of this feels like such an existential threat to Fells Point, to the historic district, is because there's this sense that the BMZA and the chat processes are broken, that they're not on the side of the community, that they're rigged or political. And so I would just urge this, on top of all the great things everyone said, everyone spoke eloquently about protecting our neighborhoods, I would urge at the council and at the communities and the future council person, whoever that be, that everyone take a look seriously at the CHAP and the BMZA processes and connect that to the TransForm Baltimore process as well. They're connected, and if people had a sense that the BMZA and the CHAP were fair and transparent, I don't think it would be as much of a concern what particular zoning for any particular property or any particular type. So I would just urge and remind people to take a look at that.
Thank you. That's the end of my list. Did I miss anyone? Mr. Quigley, you're here? Okay. Which one?
Yes, sir. How you doing this evening?
Good evening.
My name is Jim Quigley. I own a property at 633 Portland Street. I own a small Irish pub. I'm from Baltimore. I've been here all my life, and I'm also pro Baltimore. I'm a businessman, and I was proposed for my zoning at my establishment for my building where I live in the historic neighborhood of Ridgely's Delight for R8. And I've done a lot of research. I've looked into a lot of things, and I feel like I should be under the new legislation coming out, C1E. I've been a tavern for 175 years. I've been at my business for 10 years. I've seen a lot of good things. I've seen a lot of bad things in my neighborhood. I'm a good business owner. I sweep my street as often as I can. I talk to my neighbors. I'm always looking out for them. I'm about a half a block, 3/4 of a block from the stadium, and I feel like the only reason why I'm here tonight is because I'm a good businessman and I try to do the right thing. And if you send me back to something and not forward for what I should be, I'm a permitted use. I've been in existing business for 175 years before the people that own me, and all I'm asking is that you don't go back, but help me to get forward. So be it.
Yeah, James, I think Councilman Costello submitted your amendment. We talked, didn't we?
Yeah, Councilman Costello, he submitted it for C1 after we've had I don't like to say, but we have a difference on the interpretation as far as he feels like C1, which is a conditional use, versus C1E, which is a permitted use. I outdate the code. My tavern's been in business for 175 years. I built my building from the ground up. I tore it down. I got wood windows, wood doors. There's just a difference in the interpretation of what my neighborhood wrote me a letter for C1E, and he feels like I should be C1 because of the live entertainment thing. Anything with live entertainment, you still have to go down and ask for permission. Okay, C1E is a permitted use. Is for a permitted use. Conditional, they're afraid that yada 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 whatever. But that's I just want to get what I think. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. We have another 10 minutes. Senator, you want to say something? You have 3 minutes.
And I can do it in 3 minutes. Let me first say thank you for this process, but there are many people here, as you well know, who are interested in and very concerned about the heights and of their buildings, and I think we should take all of that into consideration because many people have invested in their communities for decades, and we realize that. But I think you heard some folks from Reservoir Hill, and there are communities like Reservoir Hill all over the city looking for opportunities and need opportunities and want retail development in their neighborhoods. So as you all continue to do what you're doing, we ask you to look into some of those other neighborhoods. In fact, stir some of those folks over into those neighborhoods because they want them over there. But let's preserve, let's preserve what people want in their communities because we can't afford to lose any of you. We need you. We need you because you've invested in the city, you live in the city, you care about your neighborhoods, and you care about your communities. And Baltimore couldn't be what it is today if it weren't for you. Everybody understood the unrest. Not everybody understood the unrest. And I tell folks, by no means do we condone violence in the city at all. But But what happened during the unrest is we showed a light on parts of the city that have not been invested in. So let's spread the wealth, spread the opportunity, and allow those who've invested in their communities and their neighborhoods to preserve their neighborhoods and let it be what the community wants. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator. Councilman Craig?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to respond to a couple things, just so folks understand. As I said at the very beginning of this, there's still a lot of the process to go, so we're going to continue working through the process. There were some amendments mentioned tonight. We put some in. I think there were some more suggested. I am listening to what folks have to say. I think what we need to remember is what the current zoning is in most of this area, particularly in the Broadway corridor, going down Broadway and across the existing streets down there, Eastern Avenue, Fleet Street, Alisana Street. Most of that area is B22, which is a mid-level business zoning under the current code. It has a 2.5 FAR, which allows certain amount of height. Many of those buildings could actually get another story on them, depending on how deep they've been built. If they haven't been built all the way back, they could potentially get another story on them with the existing B22. On the vacant lots, as we saw a minute ago from Mara and her lot, that's the Heck Company lot. It's a huge spot. The Rite Aid is a similar spot under the existing zoning. The C1, we are looking at the C1, and we're looking at the definitions in the C1, the bulk regulations. We have had conversations about that as to whether that number would end up being 60 or maybe end up being another number, so we're still talking about that. And the densities in terms of the square footages for units in both C1 and C2. So we're looking at those also. But with regard to the urban renewal ordinance, you know, we repealed the urban renewal ordinance and reenacted the urban renewal ordinance back in, I believe it was 2007, as part of the historic Southeast rezoning. There is a waterfront overlay in the new code, which covers the waterfront down along there, essentially the same overlay that exists under the existing zoning. If you look at that, if you go to the tables, and because I know everybody's looking at these things, if you go to table 129032, it's 9032, that has the Fells Point overlay. If you're interested in the Canton overlay, it's 129031. So they tell you both the overlay, they show you the map, and then they tell you the actually bulk regulations on the various parcels that are set forth in there, as well as the access corridors. We did get recommendations and comments from the Canton Community Association with regard to the Canton access corridors. We did not receive anything from any of the Fells Point organizations with regard to any of the Fells Point corridors. And Ms. Feinberg went out to all of those associations when we got ready to deal with that section when we were dealing with the text. So we're going to continue to look at this. When we get the next date for the next map hearings, we don't have that yet, but it will be posted, and we'll make sure that we share it with all the associations so that they can get it out to everyone. It won't be in this area. It'll probably be up toward Poly. It'll be at Poly. It'll be at Poly. We just don't have a date yet, so we'll let you know on that. But in all likelihood, we're not going to vote on these maps until probably, the end of the year? On the maps? Probably the end of the year before we vote on the maps. So, so there's time to talk to us, and there's time to talk to us about your properties. Beth.
Sit up.
What's the best way to communicate to you if a majority of our residents in our neighborhood want a certain thing?
Just send an email to me and send an email to the committee. It's important that it gets in the committee record.
Okay, so the email that I sent a
We've got that. Yep, we got it.
And do I mean, do you want waves of email? Do you want any more from individual people?
It-
Do you want?
Anybody that wants to send us an email is welcome to send us an email. Email to the committee. Go ahead, Jennifer.
It's Jennifer, JENNIFER, Coates, COATES, at baltimorecity.gov.
Okay.
Yeah, after,
Okay, go ahead.
after
I'm
the hearing,
finished. Go
she's
ahead.
still here, you can come up and get the email address. So you know nothing from lawyer, nothing? Okay. Our next public hearing on map amendments for City Council Bill 12-0152, TransForm Baltimore. Zoning will be announced and published on the City Council's legislative website. I really want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I really, again, want to thank you. It was a great group. We did listen to you, so, you know, look around. Before you leave, look around, make sure you take what you brought with you. Thank you.